Hi, this is week 4, which is also midterm week. So I want to be sure to go through with you the readings from this week because you will not be having a learning assessment on this material. Rather, the subject matter for this week will be included in your midterm exam, which is posted in your folder. So this is the week where we will continue with our conversations around our healthcare system. And the topic that is covered this week is regarding rationing of healthcare for older adults. There's so much conversation out there about the rising cost of healthcare and what are we going to do as a country to try to curb the growth of healthcare expenditures. So consequently, older adults get wrapped up into that conversation because there is a lot of misconception that the elderly are the group of people that are sucking up the most resources, particularly the elderly who are at the end of their life. And so that tends to become a focus of our desire to want to curb healthcare expenditure growth is by talking about how that will impact older adults. So rationing is a very widely known and somewhat accepted method of dealing with healthcare expenditures. And there are some very interesting readings in this chapter, readings number 16, 17, 19, and 20. The first one, reading number 16 by a gentleman by the name of Daniel Callahan, is actually putting forward a theory that rationing should be age-based. In other words, you reach a certain age and you really shouldn't need or require or deserve aggressive health care. And so questions such as, should a 75-year-old woman get a knee replacement or a hip replacement? Or should a 97-year-old person be eligible to receive an aortic valve transplant? Which, by the way, is a true story from my working years. But anyway, so how do we go about making these healthcare decisions? And so Daniel Callahan is a very controversial writer on this topic. And so I want you to be sure that you are reading his reading in this chapter. There are other authors that like to put forward an alternative method for dealing with making healthcare decisions, and that is that we as a society should move more towards waste avoidance versus age-based. And there are some theories regarding other methods for making healthcare decisions. And I want to turn your attention to that page. It's page number 179. So there, for you financial people, there are cost benefit decision-making processes, cost effectiveness analysis. So on page 179, please be sure that you read through the different methodologies or alternative methodologies for making healthcare decisions. There are backdoor approaches to rationing healthcare, not just the obvious of you are 75, so therefore you don't get access to healthcare, but backdoor approaches like managed care. Oh, excuse me, that's my phone. Managed care, which we're probably all very familiar with, where you have to go through a series of evaluations and get referred to specialists to get care. That's one method of rationing healthcare is through managed care. There are other ways to ration healthcare. You've heard about other countries where if you need to see a cardiologist, you have to wait 4, 5, even 6 months to see a cardiologist. This book in this chapter gives some examples of healthcare rationing that actually takes place in other countries. So it is a very important and very overwhelming topic related to how we are going to go about curbing the growth of healthcare and how older adults interact, with that. Being an intro course, we can't do this probably could be an entire course in and of itself, healthcare and spending in older adults. But I want to again turn your attention to readings number 16, number 17, number 19, and number 20, and making sure that you understand what some alternative approaches are to healthcare rationing or healthcare decision making versus just rationing based on age. You probably, those of you who paid a lot of attention in 2010 to the presidential election, will remember there was a lot of discussion about these health panels, or I'm sorry, death panels that were allegedly a part of the Affordable Care Act that was passed by President Obama and his administration. That was a panic reaction societally to this idea of having to ration healthcare. So there's some reference in the chapter to these death panels. I would like you to understand what that was all about as well. The second part of the readings for this week gets into the topic of family caregiving for our elderly, and should families be required to take care of their own. Many of you have mentioned in some previous discussion board postings that there are other societies and other cultures that deal with the long-term care requirements of their elderly citizens very differently than the United States does. There is a section in this chapter between pages 211 and 235 that focuses very heavily on the Medicaid system. I'm going to save you some time and tell you that you certainly can read through that material, but I don't intend to focus any time in the midterm exam on the areas of Medicaid that are mentioned in this chapter. But back to the issue of should families care for their own. Long-term care is a significant issue for our elderly citizens. And here's the reason. There is such a misconception out there that Medicare is going to pay for everything. When Medicare came into being and Social Security in the 1960s, it put a lot of the responsibility of the care of our elders into the hands of the government. So there are some theories that because of that, we have now nurtured and grown a society that believes that it's just up to the government to take care of my mother or my grandmother. And so have we created this society that has just put all of the responsibility in the laps of our government? And do we need to have the pendulum swing in a little bit of a different direction and put more of that responsibility on families? This is also characterized in Moody and Sasser as a controversy, because Moody and Sasser bring up the fact that in actuality, the majority of care for long-term care for older adults are provided, in fact, by family members. So again, another myth-busting issue here is our elderly people are not just put in nursing homes and left to die by their families. So I have also included in this week's folder some additional supplemental information, again, about the populations of people in nursing homes, so that we can begin to unwind this belief that when somebody reaches the age of 70, their families just put them in a retirement home, a nursing home, and assisted living, and they languish and are forgotten about. So that covers week 4. I think you will do very well in the midterm. There should be no surprises to you. Everything that is on the midterm we have covered in the first 3 weeks as well as this week of the course. So please reach out with questions or concerns. You guys are doing a great job. I'm loving this class because you are so interested and engaged and involved with this. So thanks for everything, and I'll see you next week. Have a good week. Bye.